Exposed, my sinister encounter with a cursed four-dimensional being from the haunted unknown. Claire stood at the dark edge of her yard, breath quickening as she stared at the eerie symbols etched into the cracked pavement. They twisted and curled, inviting and suffocating all at once. Faint memories of a happier time flickered back to her mind, the laughter of her son, Ethan, as they chased bubbles in the sun. But now, a chill ran down her spine. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, something far more sinister pressed in, the air thick with dread. As she walked into her house, the familiar creaks of the old floorboards felt like whispers. She turned to the living room, where Ethan sat, surrounded by crayon drawings of the very symbols that haunted her. His wide eyes gleamed with a mixture of excitement and something darker. "Mom, look! This is the Watcher." He pointed proudly, but his innocent voice sent a shiver through her. The adorned figures galloped onto the paper, more grotesque than enchanting. As Claire plastered on a smile, her heart drummed with fear. "That's great, buddy," she managed, shaking off the dread curling around her. Days passed in a surreal haze. At the diner, seated around families and friendly chatter, the conversations jolted her back to reality. Whispers of lost children and empty playgrounds danced around her, chilling her bones. "Have you heard?" A waitress leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "A couple more kids are missing. Folks say there's something lurking in the shadows." She couldn't help but feel the weight of those words gripping her throat. Were the symbols connected? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. By the time Claire collapsed into bed, shadows flickered along the walls, warping into unrecognizable shapes. Each night, Ethan's conversations grew darker. "Mom, the Watcher is watching you," he whispered one evening, his face ghostly pale, eyes wide with fear. A relentless shiver coursed through her, grounding her in the terror lacing through their home. Her mind spiraled. "That's just pretend, buddy." But as she forced the words out, doubt clawed at her heart, nights bled into frenzied days. Determined, Claire ventured to the old library, dust swirling around her as she rifled through scattered records. Stories surfaced: lost children, swirling darkness, a cursed school abandoned at the town's edge. An ominous chill wrapped tighter around Claire. She took a breath, hearing her own heartbeat pounding louder than ever. What were these places? She felt invisible forces pressing in, dark histories colliding with her present. A familiar dread shadowed her every step. The neighbors that once offered friendly greetings now seemed unsettling, their smiles too wide, their glances too sharp. Was this paranoia, or did they sense what she sensed? Eyes followed her as she hurried home. Just when she thought she could find peace, the lights flickered for a heartbeat longer than normal. Then came a dreadful silence, more suffocating than the darkness that engulfed her. Claire grasped for clarity, for comfort, but found none. Ethan sat still, staring ahead, breath shallow. "Mom, something's watching us." In that moment, everything shifted. Her sense of safety shattered. Terror gripped her heart as the air pulsed with something beyond comprehension. She would fight, but could she push back against the shadows that wanted to consume them, or would the Watcher take them into the unknown, where screaming was merely the prelude to silence? Claire's next move loomed before her, the weight of the darkness. Pressing in, demanding answers before it claimed her son forever. Claire's breath quickened, adrenaline coursing through her veins as the shadows shivered at the corners of her vision. She forced herself to turn, to face the murk shrouding the room. The air had thickened, swirling with an unholy presence. She could feel it. It seeped into her skin, clawed at her throat, suffocated her thoughts. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" "You have to listen," came Ethan's small, quaked voice, a fragile echo that felt like glass breaking in the night. "The Watcher wants you to draw it too." Claire's heart dropped. If this thing wanted her drawings. If it wanted anything from her. The realization twisted inside her like a knife. No, no. We can't give it anything. We don't know what it means. The shadows flickered again, a draft whispering from an unknowable source. Dread settled deep in her chest like a weight too massive to carry. Could she resist the Watcher? Was this all really about a drawing? Claire's thoughts spiraled. "Ethan, we have to get out of here. Now." But the boy remained fixed in place, his gaze glued to the darkened corner of the room. "Mom, it's here." A bone-chilling chill swept through the air as a low hum resonated, vibrating against her skin. Claire took a tentative step forward, each footfall soundly thudding in the growing silence. "Show yourself," she demanded, voice shaking, heart galloping. She was not ready to fight the unknown, to confront a creature feeding off fear. A flicker in the corner caught her eye. A figure precipitated from the darkness, coalescing into something grotesque, a mass of shadows and glowing symbols spiraled into existence. Her mind screamed, was it possible this was what she had drawn? The Watcher loomed, its elongated limbs stretching impossibly, its eyes, or what seemed to be eyes, bore through her, reading the depths of her despair. "You've been waiting for us," Claire stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from us?" "What they want," Ethan suddenly interjected, his voice ringing clear and heavy as bells. "They want what we want." "What do you mean?" Claire asked, panic rising. The child's innocent calm felt surreal against the encroaching horror. The room warped, shadows inching closer. "Safe," Ethan whispered, leaning toward the Watcher. "Can we go somewhere safe?" The Watcher extended a gnarled finger, beckoning. It was horrifying yet magnetic. Some primal instinct tried to pull her closer. But its invitation echoed in her mind, "Join us. Be one with the void." "No!" Claire shouted, lunging forward, grabbing Ethan's arms, pulling him back. "We need to fight this." Tension thickened as an eruption of laughter filled the air, hollow and dark, shifting her very core. 1,000 voices tangled together, taunting her resolve. Each sound ricocheted off the walls, bringing back memories of happy times that now felt like a curse. Her son gasped as shadows withdrew momentarily, revealing a way out. "Mom, we have to go." But could she trust their means of escape? Claire's stomach twisted in knots. If she rushed into the unknown, would they end up in worse hands? Sweat dripped down her brow. Every instinct screamed to move, to flee. Was running away the answer, or would it lead them deeper into the darkness? "Quick, Mom!" Ethan urged, panic sparking like lightning in his eyes. As the shadows swirled once more, their ominous energy pressed against her skin like nettles. Half of her craved the darkness. Was it safety, or a deeper threat? The air rippled with the scent of decay, and Claire felt herself teetering on the edge of disbelief and terror, straddling the line between madness and clarity. With a surge of desperation, Claire made a decision. She took Ethan's hand and plunged into the swirling shadows, uncertain if her action would save them or seal their fate forever. The darkness engulfed them, whispering secrets more dreadful than a mother's worst fear, and she knew, at that moment, that everything she once believed about safety had been shattered. What awaited them in the void was more terrifying than anything she could have imagined, and as they fell deeper, she couldn't shake the chilling thought, what if escaping was the very thing that would bring the Watcher to them? The shadows pulled Claire and Ethan through the thick veil of darkness, swirling, stretching, and morphing into an eerie kaleidoscope as though they were falling through a twisted dreamscape. Time felt irrelevant here. Each second was a suffocation of sound, the laughter still echoing, drowning out their breaths, driving fear deep into Claire's bones. "Mom, it feels wrong." Ethan's voice trembled, the innocence in it now tainted by an awareness far too mature for his young soul. Claire tightened her grip on his hand, her heart pounding, echoing in her ears like a war drum. The void around them twisted and shifted, revealing distant glimpses of landscapes drenched in shadows. She saw silhouettes of houses, streets lined with empty cars, all draped in an oppressive silence. It felt familiar yet horrifyingly alien. Shadows danced across everything like fingers tracing forgotten memories. What was this place? Where were they going? Ethan, she gasped, her grip firm yet trembling. We need to stay together. They hit solid ground, stumbling as the shadows coiled around them like cobwebs. Claire glanced around, panic flooding her chest, readying herself for whatever horrors awaited. They stood in a cavernous space, the walls pulsating with the energy of the shadows. It was a grove of sorts, lit by a sickly green luminescence that seemed to pulse to an unheard rhythm. More figures materialized from the depths of the shadows, akin to the Watcher but grotesquely distorted. Their forms elongated into terrifying shapes, twisting, merging with the darkness. Ethereal whispers floated around them, words weaving in and out of comprehension, beckoning, taunting. "Welcome, little artist," one voice rasped, a confluence of many. It slipped through the air, slicing Claire's resolve. "You bring hope and despair, painting us into existence. Will you show us the depth of your fear?" "Shut up!" Claire shouted, backing away as cold sweat dripped down her back. The figures lunged forward, a wave of shadowy limbs reaching out, grabbing hold of her dread, her confusion. Ethan stood behind her, eyes wide, almost entranced by the swirling terror. "Please, you don't understand," Claire shouted, desperation gripping her throat. "I want to go home." "Home," the shadows rippled with laughter. "Home is the throat of fear. Home is the canvas of your nightmares. Show us what you fear, and we will give you safety." Then came a vision, a flash, a glimpse of the one thing Claire feared most. The attic in their old house, filled with forgotten things, broken toys, old family photos, and the rusted remnants of childhood innocence torn apart by time. She realized that their drawings had awakened this unknown, this monstrous entity feeding on their anguish. "Ethan, we need to draw. We have to draw something, Mom, I can't." His voice quivered, realizing the weight of her words. The pressure of the multiplying shadows danced closer, their chilling presence now suffocating. "You have to," she urged. "It can't have power over us unless we let it." "But what do I draw?" He stood frozen, fear battling with instinct. "Draw whatever you see," Claire insisted, the shadows pushing against them, the whispers growing louder. "Your fear, your hope. Fight it." Ethan's hands trembled as he pulled out a small sketchbook, the darkness eliciting a rush of memories. "What if I can't? Then we lose everything." Claire screamed, terror rippling through her as shadows brushed against her skin like cold fingers. Time slowed as she watched her son desperately scrawl on the pages, ink bleeding like a wound, powerful and raw. But even through the shadows, a dawning realization formed: was there escape woven into these very thoughts and drawings? Or would this revelation only yield a darker power, further anchoring them within the Watcher's domain? As Ethan sketched furiously, a question whispered in her mind, creeping unease coiling tighter. What if each stroke brought them closer to surrendering to the darkness? And just as that sinister idea took root, the shadows lurched, their muted sounds growing sharper. Her son's trembling hand paused mid-stroke, and Claire's heart plummeted as the beings began to loom in closer. What had she unleashed with that command? It surged within her, threatening to bring forth not just their fears but their all-consuming doom. The void tightened around them, mirroring the horror that lay ahead, because in that moment, Claire knew one thing was certain: the Watcher was done waiting. The echo of the shadows twisted in Claire's mind, wrapping her thoughts in a layer of dread. Ethan's breath hitched beside her, a soft quiver barely audible over the sinister whispers. The figures danced, morphing grotesquely into faces she almost recognized, eyes burning with empty hunger. They advanced, inching closer, their twisted bodies shuddering with an insatiable craving to pull them into the depths of this hell. "Ethan, you have to keep drawing," Claire urged, shaking off the paralyzing fear that gripped her heart. She could sense the darkness pulling at the edges of her sanity, trying to drown her, and she needed her son to create anything to anchor them to reality. But Ethan's hand wavered, ink pooling on the page as he hesitated, the terrifying weight of his imagination momentarily overpowering him. "Mom, I see things that I don't want to draw." His voice faltered, cracking under the pressure of the shadow's relentless pull. Claire's own fear threatened to consume her. "Focus, Ethan. Remember the attic? Let us give them something to fear." It sounded desperate, but she had no choice. Drawing was their chance, their weapon. As if sensing the shift, the shadows twisted and hissed, a cacophony of despair weaving through the air. The figures began to reach for them, grotesquely elongated fingers eager to sink into their flesh. Clenching her fists, Claire felt the surge of memories rush back, the attic's suffocating air, the half-remembered whispers of a nursery rhyme. It filled her with determination. "Draw the light, Ethan. Draw the light that burst through the attic window. Use it." With wide eyes, he began to sketch, his pencil flying across the paper, sweat beading on his brow. The shadows recoiled slightly, a splitting tremor running through their forms at the hint of brightness. Could they truly be weak? Encouraged, Claire closed her eyes for a moment, envisioning the view. She recalled every crack in the wood, every beam lit up by that golden light that once filled her childhood with warmth. "Remember the light, Ethan. It will keep the darkness at bay." "Okay. I see it." His hand didn't tremble as the pencil moved fiercely, wild strokes carving the image of light and hope onto the paper. But then the walls shuddered, the shrieking laughter of the shadows drowning out the rhythm of the pencil on paper. The creeping sensation of despair clung to her, suffocating as she realized it wasn't just a matter of light against dark. With every stroke, the whispers swelled, growing frantic, pleading, almost like ghosts trapped in an endless cycle of anguish. "No, no." A voice cut through like glass, clear and shrill. "You can't break the cycle. You can't escape." Claire felt the dark energy crackle around them, slithering closer, trying to tether them to this grotesque reality. "Ethan, don't listen. Just keep drawing. Don't let them control you." He gasped, the pencil frozen mid-stroke as he launched back, a flood of terror filling his face. "Mom, it's so much worse than I thought. I see them trying to come through. It's like they're pulling things from my mind." Reality warped around them as the shadows lunged forward. Claire's heart raced violently, instinct screamed at her, desperate for survival. She knew in that moment the stakes had changed. This was no longer just a fight against shadows but a battle for their very essence. "Just imagine, Ethan. Imagine we're safe. Paint the walls of our home, the smell of dinner on a Sunday." She pushed every ounce of hope into her voice, grabbing his shoulders, but the shadows recoiled for a second too long, shadows morphing into something darker, something worse, their true forms, naked and twisted with despair, oozing with pain and a haunting hunger. What if we can't escape this?" Ethan whimpered, the sudden loss of faith seeping through the air like poison. The shadows pulsed, ready to devour the flickers of courage he held. Claire realized then, with a chilling clarity, they weren't just drawing back fear, they were crafting a tether of hope, a line that might snap if pulled too far. "We can't let them win. We keep drawing and praying, and fighting for light." With one final burst of energy, Ethan's hand trembled but moved again, the pencil scratching furiously as Claire held onto that sliver of hope, praying it was enough. But the moment hung in the air, suspended between terror and possibility, and deep in the swirling dark, something shifted. The Watcher was watching, its gaze cold and ravenous, and Claire realized that the shadows were not just reflections of their fears, they were becoming something greater, something they hadn't prepared for. What would happen when those shadows consumed everything they drew? What if their hopes turned into more nightmares? A pulse of dread swelled within her as the figures crept closer, because what lay ahead could shatter not just their reality, but bind them eternally to the darkness that hunted them. The darkness shrieked as a wave of desperation crashed over Claire. Ethan's hand, which had found renewed strength, now faltered. He looked up, fear etched onto his young face. "Mom, I can't keep it together." Claire's heart raced. The shadows had an eerie sentience, shifting closer, their whispers growing into a terrifying chorus. "Stay with me, Ethan," she cried, her voice tinged with urgency. "We'll fight this together." Just keep. Suddenly, the paper beneath Ethan's hands pulsed with each frantic stroke, the pencil digging deep into the surface as if it were a lifeline. Just then, flickers of light erupted from the fresh images he was creating. Sense of home wafted through the thick air. It was a moment of hope, however fleeting, but the hope was short-lived. The shadows shrieked in rage, the cacophony overwhelming, as twisted fingers reached for them. They slithered across the floor, through cracks and crevices, eager to snatch away this spark of light. Claire felt the icy grip of fear coil tighter around her throat. "Ethan, focus. We can turn this around," she implored, her voice trembling. "Draw something big, something powerful." She squeezed her eyes shut, conjuring the strongest images from her past: the towering oak in their backyard, the way its branches stretched high, catching rays of sun. Like that tree. It stood against every storm. Triumph bounced in Ethan's gaze, and his hand moved again, smearing ink like a battle-scarred warrior on the front lines. But the shadows writhed, hearts pounding against the walls they were imprisoned within, their piercing eyes fixated on Ethan's fraying spirit. "Mom, they're fighting back!" Ethan shrieked, the pencil slipping from his grip as he staggered back, breath hitching. The figures whirled into a frenzy, their faces morphing into terrifying visages that clawed at the recesses of Claire's mind. She saw flashes of her own fears reflected in their haunting eyes. Despair clutched at her heart like a vice. The Watcher was among them, an amorphous terror that feasted on every hidden dread. It expanded and contracted, an ever-looming specter, and Claire felt its hunger. "They want us to fail. They want us to." The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her and Ethan's power was their creativity, it was the only entity capable of drowning the shadows. If they faltered, they wouldn't just be drawn into darkness, they'd become a part of it. "Close your eyes again, Ethan," Claire shouted, a new fervor igniting in her voice. "Let us think bigger. What could beat this? Let us draw a sun. A blazing sun that could burn their shadows away." Ethan's gaze shifted back to the paper. The pencil snapped across the page like a bolt of lightning, fueled by their shared fear and fading hope. As he sketched, something flickered within the dark, a glimmer that felt almost tangible. Then the ground shook. The shadows recoiled, hissing in agony, and Claire's heart leaped at the sight. But it was then a chilling laugh erupted from the depths of shadows. "You think you can summon that which is pure?" The voice, mocking and sinister, echoed, vibrating through bones. Claire's heart raced, and just like that, tension snapped. The figures surged forward, terror pooling at the back of her throat, nearly choking her. Fear rippled through her like icy water. "Ethan!" she cried in desperation, noticing the ink forming a dim glow on the paper, a promise of what could be. "We have to connect. The sun needs us both." He hesitated, eyes darting between the encroaching shadows and the page beneath him, but that flicker of hope drew him near. They struggled to merge their imaginations into something cohesive, a united front against the impending doom. But as they drew nearer to completion, the figures around them began to shift, the shadows warping into chilling images of past regrets, memories tainted by guilt and longing. Claire felt her heart sink. "No. Fight it. This is our fight." Their own insecurities flooded in the weight of failure, moments lost, each shadowy tendril wrapping tighter around them, tethering them to despair. The vivid light on the page pulsed like a heartbeat, fighting against the tide of shadows consuming them. Would it be enough? Could the flickering strength of their creation hold against the full force of the darkness? With a strangled cry, Claire reached for Ethan, the shadows clawing at her limbs, dragging her away from him. Ethan. Don't let them win. Finish it. Just as the light began to break, Claire felt a sharp tug on her consciousness. The Watcher loomed, its presence looming large as the air felt charged, heavy. Claire gasped, looking frantically at Ethan. Did they have enough strength or had they already lost? Then the Watcher leaned closer, its cold breath wafting over her, and she realized, with dawning horror, they might not even know what they were really drawing. The darkness wasn't just closing in, it was rewriting their reality. What new terror awaited them on the other side of that darkness? Would they unleash worse horrors than they could ever imagine? Or, in resisting the shadows, did they risk inviting them to become part of their own tale? Ethan clutched the pencil, his knuckles white as he trembled. The paper pulsed beneath his fingers, clashing against the suffocating darkness surrounding them. Claire felt the shadows tugging at her thoughts, defiantly whispering her worst fears. She couldn't let them win. Ethan, think about the sun. Picture it burning bright. That's our strength. She shouted, feeling the damp chill creep through her skin. Around them, the shadows twisted and writhed like heartless serpents, closing in. The Watcher's presence was oppressive, each breath it took barely masking the malice within. Claire felt it, a darkness that craved despair, that sought to drain every shred of light they had. It's not just about the sun, Ethan. We need to draw our hope, our dreams. He hesitated, eyes flickering between the page and the encroaching gloom. The shadows hissed, their voices blending into a maddening symphony of torment. What if I can't? He stammered, the weight of his doubt pulling him down. You can. You have the power. Desperation coursed through her veins, but the reality fell heavy upon her heart. What if she was wrong? What if the darkness was simply too strong? A sharp frost gripped the air, and the shadows laughed, their chilling chorus sending icy fingers creeping up her spine. You'll never escape, they taunted, identities shifting to take forms. She recognized her own failures, mistakes dancing in ghastly mockery. Mom! Ethan cried, sudden anguish ripping through him. It's too much. No. Focus. Claire urged, her own fear flaring into a wild spark of determination. Remember that time we climbed the tree? Up high, feeling the wind? Draw that. With every step Ethan took toward the paper, the shadows recoiled, burning at the edges. Claire could see it now, a flicker of resolve igniting in his gaze. But the shadows turned furious, their screeches piercing the air as they lashed out. Claire's heart hammered, she had to shield Ethan. She threw herself forward, hands outstretched as if to intercept the darkness. We have to finish this. Together. The ink glowed fiercely in response, reverberating with light, creating a cocoon around them. The visceral energy crackling in the air felt almost sacred. Ethan's hand moved with purpose, guided by her encouragement. The branches. They need leaves. Draw them strong. Shadows swelled, funneling their anger into a chaotic storm, catching their words and twisting them. You think your memories can protect you? The Watcher hissed, its voice a shattering ice on her spine. You'll pay for this defiance. Deep down, Claire knew this wasn't just a fight against darkness. It was a desperate stand against everything they had ever feared. Each stroke of the pencil became a battle, a promise of protection. Then, as Ethan's tree took form, it became a beacon, a shining testament to their resilience. The shadows recoiled, a moment of indecision rippling through them. They hissed together in frantic whispers, but the sunlight depicted on the paper grew stronger, lighting up the room as if daring the darkness to come closer. However, the Watcher's laughter cut through the thin veil of hope like a funeral dirge. You're naive. What you draw is but a cry in the void. It will not save you. Without warning, tendrils of pitch-black energy lunged at Ethan, a collar of darkness snapping around his wrist, pulling unyieldingly. Ethan! Claire screamed. She rushed forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. No! Fight it! You can do this. The darkness poured into the room, almost tangible, as if the shadows themselves were alive, hungrily anticipating their demise. Claire could feel her resolve waver beneath their malevolent stares, but she fought to stay steady. Then suddenly, Ethan's face twisted with panic, and Claire saw it. The encroaching shadows molded themselves into familiar faces, the ghosts of their shared traumas materializing around him. Regrets, fears, memories they thought buried, unearthing them in harrowing clarity. "Mom, I can see them." His voice quivered, too weak to contain the trembling horror. It's too real." "No. They are not real," Claire shouted, her heart pounding again against the suffocating dread. "You have to remember what we create together, not what they want you to see." The shadows shrieked, morphing into grotesque shapes, forcing her to relive the heart-wrenching moments, the times she had let him down, choices that echoed with regret. "Look at me, Ethan. You can push them back." Just as he seemed on the edge of falling into despair, a light flickered his creativity, their bond lifting against the tide. Together, they could reimagine the nightmare. But as they pushed forward, an unseen force yanked Claire away, darkness wrapping around her like cold chains. "We choose who remains." The Watcher bellowed, echoing the relentless pressures of fate, time stretching like a hollow drum. Would they succumb to the shadows, or could they break free? With every breath straining against the restraints of despair, a single question echoed in Claire's mind: if they succeeded, what untold horrors would the darkness unleash in retaliation? Claire gasped as the shadows tightened around her, their grip icy and unforgiving. She could barely breathe, panic clawing at her throat. The darkness radiated a sickening energy that threatened to consume her whole. Ethan, her focus shifted back to him, the fight still raging in his hazel eyes as he struggled against the oppressive pull of the dark. "Don't let it take you," Claire yelled, her voice breaking through the cacophony of whispers swirling around them. He was her son, her protector, and they needed to reclaim their light. With every ounce of willpower she could muster, she reached out, trying to break through the layers of fear that enveloped him. "We are stronger together," Claire shouted, recalling the moments of laughter, of joy, of light, urging Ethan to do the same. "Draw the sky. Draw the clouds." Just as she spoke, the shadows roared in fury, reshaping the room around them, distorting reality itself. Tables splintered and the walls curled inward like a grotesque creature, consuming the brightness. Claire could barely stand the sight. Her sanctuary twisted into a lair of despair. Ethan's hand faltered, the pencil grasped and his fingers trembled. Gray shadows clawed at his mind, each memory that surfaced a sharp thorn, threatening to bury him deeper. They were not just ghosts, they were pieces of him, insecurities manifested, taunting him in unison. "You think you can save him?" they jeered, echoing through the dark. "He is nothing without us, just a hollow shell of a boy lost in his mistakes." "No," she shouted back, furious and desperate. "He isn't. He is a light. And he will outshine you." The shadow shrieked, a piercing sound that echoed despair through the trap. With a jolt, Claire slammed her thoughts together, conjuring every ounce of warmth, every moment where laughter replaced tears, pushing it toward Ethan. With a sudden surge of energy, Ethan lifted his head, his expression fierce. "Get out of my head!" he roared. The shadows recoiled, the brightness undulating from the ink began to push back against the darkness. "Yes. There it is." Claire encouraged him, her heart racing. "You can do this." At that moment, Ethan's pencil swept across the page, drawing the sky a brilliant pool of blue, swirling with hope. It was their freedom, their escape. The dark forms shrieked in agony, dissolving under the might of the light he created. But it wasn't enough. The shadows began to reform, reshaping into monstrous, distorted faces, everyone and everything they had ever feared. Claire recoiled, the icy tendrils tightening around her throat, constricting her ability to shout, to move. "Ethan!" she gasped, "they're trying to break you. Remember the tree. Draw the heart of it." Focusing hard, Ethan closed his eyes, trembling as he envisioned not just the tree, but the deep roots anchoring it to the earth, his foundation. Power surged through him. His hand flew, drawing faster, frantic strokes that filled the page with colors that fought against the gray. The shadows screeched again, now filled with rage. You think you can escape? You belong to us. A howl exploded through the room, a monstrous torrent crashing into Claire. She felt it invade her chest, the weight of despair threatening to bury her again. There was no escape. But then, just when Claire thought all hope was lost, a spark ignited in Ethan's creation. The tree began to shimmer and pulse, a beacon against the crushing darkness. Tender sprouts broke free, reaching out to her. "Mom!" Ethan cried, voice strained, fighting against the shadows that persisted. "It's not over." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within Claire. They were on the brink. She could feel the darkness weakening, snapping under the light of their bond. "Keep going. Fill it with light. Show them what we are made of." She shouted again, her voice wavering but strong, but something shifted. The Watcher roared, a tempest of fury unleashed. "You think this battle is done? You've simply drawn its attention. The real fight is only starting." The shriek echoed in her mind, drowning her thoughts, leaving a void where only terror remained. She could see the shadows reeling, but they were gathering strength, swirling with an intent that sent ripples of fear coursing through her. Would they stand firm, or would the dark return to claim what they fought so hard for? With the boundary of light teetering on the edge of collapse, Claire wondered, were they truly united against the approaching storm, or was this just the beginning of a nightmare they could never escape? The storm erupted with a ferocity that rattled Claire's bones. The darkness seemed to pulse, like a living thing, ready to swallow them whole. Shadows whipped around wildly, slashing through the air with howls that pierced the night. Claire's heart raced, each thud echoing the chaos around her. She could barely stand, her resolve collapsing under the oppressive weight pressing down on her. Ethan's focus wavered, the light flickering like a dying candle. "Mom, I can't," he gasped, the pencil wobbling in his grip. The shadows hissed, a terrible chorus of malice that enveloped him, dragging him back toward the abyss. "Push through it!" Claire screamed. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, bringing forth the memories of laughter and warmth that had stitched their bond together. "You are brave. You are my son. You can do this." Ethan's breath quickened, the pencil hovering above the page, frozen by fear. Just then, a monstrous face emerged from the shadows, a grotesque reflection of Ethan's self-doubt, mouth twisted into a sneer. "You think you're worthy of light?" It taunted, shadows oozing around its grotesque form. "You've always failed. You are just a boy playing pretend." Claire felt her own heart shatter at the sight. She knew these demons, the memories lurking behind their malicious smiles. They were echoes of every failure, every time they felt alone. But they couldn't be real. Not here and now. "Don't listen to them," Claire shouted, emphasizing her words with fervor. "They're liars. Draw your truth, Ethan. Draw your courage." Ethan's hand trembled and reflexively, he began sketching. First were jagged lines, hesitant strokes that mirrored his uncertainty. The room shook violently, walls warping as the shadows constricted, ready to muffle their light. "Faster, Ethan!" Claire called, desperation framing her every word. The whispers grew loud, drowning her out with fervor. "Hope is a lie. You are nothing." Their voices clawed at her sanity, threatening to pull her under the tidal wave of darkness. Cold sweat rolled down her back as she sensed the shadows clenching around her, suffocating the air. Suddenly, in a burst of resolve, Ethan threw his eyes wide. "No!" he bellowed, lifting the pencil high. The stroke landed, igniting the page with brilliant light brighter than anything Claire had seen. The figures around them hesitated, terrified of the purity that poured forth. "That's it." Claire encouraged, the urge to move overwhelming. She stepped forward, an instinctive protector ready to shield her son against the approaching storm. With each solid stroke Ethan made, the light pulsed stronger, illuminating their surroundings. Shadows staggered with each burst of brilliance, morphing into shapes of confusion, fearful of being unmade, but it wasn't enough. The Watcher loomed larger, its monstrous silhouette eclipsing their hard-fought light. "Foolish child!" it roared, voice like thunder, "you think you can escape your own darkness? I will consume everything you love." Another attack surged from it, dark tendrils reaching out like claws, ensnaring Claire's wrists. Panic surged as she struggled, feeling every ounce of hope slipping away. "Ethan!" she yelled, her voice now a frantic whisper. But just as despair threatened to claw them from within, Ethan cried out again, stronger this time. "I want to let you take her." The ink on the page darkened and surged, running away from him. Claire watched in horror as the shadows momentarily retreated, drawn away by the pulsing light. "Yes!" she shouted, her voice cracking. "You can do it. Fill it with everything we are." Ethan concentrated, feeding the artwork his spirit, pouring in every memory, every flicker of warmth. The world around them trembled, shadows gasping, recoiling against the ferocity of their combined bond. And then, he drew something new, a heart pulsing at the core of their creation. Claire felt her own heartbeat synchronize with it, the love between them igniting an overwhelming glow that surged outward. But as triumph filled the air, dark figures clawed back, reshaping from fragile fragments of despair. "Not yet!" the Watcher bellowed, surge after surge of darkness spiraling toward them. She felt it creeping up her legs, threatening to drag her in. This wasn't the end. An unsettled fear nestled in her chest. "Ethan! We need to hold on tight!" she shouted, not knowing if they'd survive. What if this was just the prelude? What terrifying outcome would they have to face? As the wall of darkness closed in once more, Claire braced herself, eyes locked on the shadows, a chilling realization creeping into her veins. They were just getting started. What would it cost them to confront the secrets hidden in the dark? The shadows closed in like a collapsing wave, heavy with despair and malice. Claire's heart raced, every beat sinking with the encroaching darkness. She felt its clammy hands wrap around her throat, squeezing tighter. "Breathe, Claire. Breathe," she whispered to herself, but her voice cracked under the weight of fear. "Mom!" Ethan cried, the pencil begging for grip in his small hands. But the glow from the page stuttered, flickering against the monstrous tide of darkness. Those twisted shadows surged forward, spilling over like ink in water, eager to drown out the light. "I'm here. Don't look away from me," Claire yelled, forcing her gaze to stay locked on Ethan's frightened face. The boy was simultaneously a lifeline and a target, exposed to their wrath. "You're stronger than them." Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes darting back to the page. Every stroke he made now felt formidable, but the Watcher grew, expanding with a grotesque smile that sent chills spiraling down Claire's spine. Its eyes, void of warmth, bore into her soul with a promise of doom. "I'll feast upon your fears," it hissed. "You can't run from what you are or who you are." Air hissed around them, a tangible exchange between hope and despair. Claire fought to hold Ethan's gaze, but the shadows hypnotized him, wrapping their tendrils around his mind, threatening to unearth the insecurities buried deep within his heart. The breath caught in her throat as a nightmarish echo called out, "You are nothing." "No. Stay with me," Claire shouted through gritted teeth. She stepped forward, bracing against the shadows as they crept closer. The warmth of their combined light flickered, but it was diminishing. Ethan was wavering. Fear clawed at his spirit like icy fingers. "Do it, Ethan, draw," she pleaded, unable to mask the tremor in her voice. "Remember our laughter. The times we stood together against the storms. Bring that to life. With each heartbeat, the light surged and dimmed, a relentless struggle between light and dark. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, the pencil trembling against the page. It was then that he felt it, a surge of warmth, memories flooding in. Soft whispers of reassurance, memories of comfort and joy twisted amid the shadows. Then he began to draw once again, each stroke deeper, more confident. Shapes leaped from the page, full of life. Creatures of light, embodiments of their love, propped up against the inevitable tidal wave. More! Claire shouted, her voice rising above panic. The silhouettes of happiness filled the room, pulsing with a bright intensity, dispersing the looming shadows like morning light chasing away dusk. Yet, the watcher wasn't finished. With a snarl, the beast lunged, undulating through the air, darkness pouring from its form like smoke. You think mere drawings can save you? I'll dissolve your hope until nothing remains. Tendrils lashed out, snatching at the light with fury. Claire's stomach dropped, she could feel the dread hanging in the air, a stench of malice that clung to her skin. Hold tight, Ethan. Claire screamed, gripping his shoulder. He nodded, breaths uneven, terror etched across his face. This was more than just darkness, it was their fears given shape, intent on devouring the truth of who they were. Ethan pushed harder, pouring himself onto the page. Suddenly, the heart he had drawn throbbed, pulses of warmth emanating outward. In sync with their shared heartbeat, the light shifted, growing into a being forged from love and courage, his mother's love. Is this all you can muster? The watcher taunted, lunging again, but the light expanded, wrapping around Ethan like a shield, igniting the shadows that dared come close. A powerful burst pushed back against the encroaching darkness, filling the air with a warm glow that seemed to embolden his spirit. Together, Ethan. Draw what we can become. Claire urged, her own courage mingling with his. The surge of light from the paper brightened, but amidst their triumph, relief was fleeting. The darkness writhed, furious and relentless, the sound of its laughter reverberating in the air as tendrils writhed, seeking to reclaim what they had lost. And then, realizing things might spiral out of control, the watcher unleashed a bone-chilling roar. You can't escape your fate. It's already written in the dark. That statement settled over Claire like ice. Deep in her marrow, a horrifying question lingered: were they truly the authors of their fate, or just characters moving through a ghastly narrative? As the flickering light began to wane and shadows coiled around them anew, Claire steeled herself against the inevitable. How much of their essence could they sacrifice to fight back? With the realization that despair only fed the watcher, Claire whispered, "Hold on to love, it's our only weapon." But as the darkness surged once again, confidence began to slip. Would they succeed, or were they merely delaying an ominous end? A chilling thought loomed: what if the purpose of the watcher was not to consume, but to reveal the truth buried within their hearts? And what horrors awaited when that truth was finally revealed? The shadows coiled tighter, wrapping Claire and Ethan in a suffocating grip. The air was thick with despair, every breath a struggle against despair. But within that darkness, a flicker of determination ignited in Claire's heart. "Ethan, don't let them take us," she shouted, her voice charged with fierce urgency. Ethan's eyes were wide, teeming with terror, but their connection pulsated like a beacon. "I see it, Mom," he declared, the wild spark of defiance igniting his spirit. "I see the light." Clenching the pencil, he pressed it to the page, pouring every ounce of his fear, his courage, into the sketches erupting forth. "Draw the sun," Claire called, her voice slicing through the chaos. "Let it shine, let it burn the darkness away." As he sketched the glowing orb, vibrant rays flooded the paper, spilling over like molten gold. The shadows hissed and shrieked, recoiling at the brightness, disintegrating at the edges as if they were made of mist. Claire felt hope surge within her chest, a fierce counterforce to the dread that had gripped her for far too long. This was a fight for their essence, for their souls. "Beyond the sun, Ethan," she cried, stoking the flames of his resolve. Draw our home, the one filled with laughter and love. Remember the warmth of family. With every stroke, memories washed over him, baking cookies together in the kitchen, splashing in puddles during rain, long summer days spent together under the trees. He let the images flow freely, anchoring them in reality with lines of joy and unity, but the darkness wouldn't yield that easily. You think mere drawings can save you? The Watcher sneered, its voice echoing like thunder. It surged forward, dark tendrils reaching hungrily for them, eager to reclaim their light. Don't listen. Claire shouted, heart hammering as the shadows twisted closer around them. This is your strength. Fight back. Draw your dreams, your hopes. Ethan's hand raced across the page, drawings transforming into vibrant worlds, a tree under which they had played, fields full of wildflowers, and starry skies where they shared stories. Each image bloomed with light, pushing against the encroaching darkness as if to say, this is what we are. In that powerful moment, Claire felt the shadows recoil. No. You will not take them from me. She bellowed, charging forward, driven by an unyielding need to protect her son. A whirlwind of echoes erupted as the Watcher writhed in agony, shadows crumbling against the radiant vision Ethan was creating. You think you are strong enough to break the cycle? It bellowed, frantic energy rippling through its form. Yes. Claire affirmed, feeling alive with purpose, each beat echoing with love and defiance. Because together, we will always rise. And suddenly, the canvas erupted in light, a burst of colors painting a future glowing with possibility. The walls shimmered and began to dissolve, unbinding from the constraints of despair. The shadows wailed, chaotic energy recoiling as the sunlit visions consumed their darkness, but as the light grew, so did the Watcher's fury. It lunged, gathering the last remnants of its power. I am the void that feeds your fears. You will not escape. Claire's heart raced. Ethan. Focus. She urged, feeling the pressure building around their burgeoning light. Draw one more thing. Draw us, together, brave and unbroken. Ethan's pencil moved furiously, capturing their united front, their hands entwined, courage radiating from both of them. With each completed stroke, their bond strengthened, pushing away the darkness further, eyes shining, hope glowing brightly. The shadows couldn't withstand the purity of their love, the power of their united hearts. Just as the Watcher's malevolence reached a fever pitch, a sudden brightness erupted, blinding and overwhelming. Claire felt the darkness shatter around them, exploding into fragments. Fear dissolved as light engulfed them entirely. Mom, we did it! Ethan shouted, voice triumphant, tears of joy spilling down his cheeks. As the blinding brilliance faded into a warm glow, they found themselves in a familiar space home. Breathing deep, Claire's heart swelled as warmth enveloped them. They were standing in their living room, the sunlight streaming through the window, every corner filled with familiarity. The oppressive weight of despair was gone, replaced by a soft, soothing breeze that lifted their spirits. I knew we could do it, Claire whispered, kneeling beside Ethan, pulling him close. The echoes of laughter filled the room as they embraced. As Claire looked around, she felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. The shadows had been banished, not only from their lives but from their hearts. Fear would no longer hold them captive, but deep within, Claire knew the darkness still existed. It lived on in others who struggled. We need to help them, Ethan, she said softly, wiping a tear from his cheek. We can't forget. Ethan nodded, determination sparking in his eyes. Together, they would rise against the darkness, sharing their light, their courage, wherever it was needed. As they stepped forward, the light of their love radiated, bright against the shadows. They were not just survivors, they were warriors. And as they looked toward the future, hope coursed through them. Their story was only just beginning. So if you like this story and want to join us for more incredible tales, you need to subscribe now so you won't miss a single one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the magic alive. I want to hear from you, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And please, don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the light together.